How do those unemployed people who travel all around the world do it? I'm from NZ. Doing a big OE overseas experience is part of our culture Aussies too. You have to save hard for a year or so to save the 2K flights, work visas enough to cover basic expenses when you land, cut expenses to a bare minimum. I walked everywhere, shared a room in a flat, ate toast a lot, but had some amazing experiences. Some jobs to do while you travel: work on yachts, ski fields, Camp America, bars, tourist places, temping in office jobs, etc. There are other options like WOO Fang. You stay on farms for free. You pay for your food accommodation by working 2-3 hours per day. Trust fund kids. Met a 30-year-old Swedish hippie type in Australia, carried a traditional type of drum, had dreadlocks, and looked like he got all of his clothes in Thailand. We became good friends. His father had passed away and left him about the equivalent of 30 million USD in cash and properties all over Europe. His grandfather had started a pharma company which was bought out. They have a lower standard of living. If you need to take 4 suitcases, it ain't for you lol. I was looking at a 27-day cruise from Sydney to Los Angeles for around $800 for 2 people. Literally cheaper than rent in either city if you are unemployed. Having done some backpacking, I can travel most of the world on under 50 a day, and around 100 a day in Europe. I've taken some long breaks in between jobs to travel, or I just work remotely. Wow. There are a lot of people who think only the rich can do this. I traveled a lot. I took a year off work. I lived off my savings and did budget travel to areas where the dollar is strong. Rich family or spouse. Or they aren't actually unemployed, they are just an influencer of some sort. There's the family money, but there's people who make it a priority. If you decide to live in a dump studio apartment and save money, don't buy the big screen TV, drive a 10-year-old car, and live a low-cost life, you can afford to fund travel. Worked with 4 guys who went to England for 2 weeks, 3 of them quit their jobs and spent months in Europe. You can spend the time to fly standby if you don't have to be at work next Tuesday. Trustafarians. Traveling modestly is cheaper than living in many US cities. If you don't have rent, mortgage, health insurance, tuition, property taxes to pay, your expenses can be surprisingly low. I have a friend super broke and moves all over, picks up jobs here and there. She is 40, has no steady job, has no residence. She somehow gets things given to her, uses lots of community support online for free stuff. Honestly, I have no clue, but they are literally floating through life on the backs of others. We've talked with her about what she is going to do when she is older. She has no idea. World travel doesn't need to be expensive so long as you are prepared for that travel to be really uncomfortable. Rich parents, or they live the hobo life. Saw an old friend's ad recently. She was promoting some outdoor industry equipment. They said she had a career as a paid rock climber, but they didn't mention her dad bought her van and all the equipment. When he stopped paying for her endless adventure, she sold several of her eggs to infertility clinics. Told me it was $10K per egg, and she was sought after stock because of the blonde hair and blue eyes. It was enough to buy her camera equipment. She spent a bunch of time following pro climbers around the desert until she got a gig as a climbing photographer. While I'm sure that's not really enough to survive on for the long term, it was an example that answered your question. Humans are weird, men. I'm part of the exact sub that caters to that kind of people in our solo travel. I also asked the same question, and the usual response outside of being rich was they saved a lot of money, 80K up, and fairly confident in getting rehired. Can work remotely, so they may only appear unemployed. They also spend the bulk of that in countries where the exchange rate favors them. If you earn probably half the world on top of sleeping in cheap hotels or hostels. There's also this thing where you get to live for free in exchange of caring for someone else's house or pet splints while the owners are away. It's called house sitting. Then, some go the charity volunteer route. They enlist in organizations that travel to certain places for free with the intent of helping poor communities. The US has very high cost of living. You can get a nice apartment with utilities in Thailand for like $400 a month. If you have savings and no income, being in other countries is cheap living. You can get a furnished Airbnb in Tokyo with all utilities for like $900 a month. And that is both cheaper and also way more fun than being unemployed in the US. Family money. I have a friend that knows someone at JetBlue and family all over the world to stay at. Remote work, and mostly, if not rich, then white folks in Southeast or South Asia or Africa, but on tight budgets. I can tell you about Goa and Kasol, Hashish capital of India. Once these Israeli kids are done with the mandatory military service, they often come to India for a year or 2 at a time. Most suffer PTSD or are just trying to numb themselves. Kassel used to be a village, but now has cafes with menus in Hebrew, as well as road and rave party signs in Hebrew. It was pretty cool in the 90s but is turning pretty shitty now. I did this with my wife. We traveled for 9 months without working. We are not trust fund kids and didn't get help from anyone. Here's how. 1. We both had relatively high-paying jobs to start. 2. We saved a ton of money over the span of like 5 years. We did this by 1. Driving 10-year-old cars, 2. Living with a roommate for a year, and 3. Not really buying many things. 3. Selling our condo and cars before traveling to avoid any upkeep expenses. 4. Paying for temp health insurance while we traveled, which is cheaper but excludes all preventative care. 5. Lots of planning to optimize costs. 6. Luck. 1. High-paying jobs is lucky no matter what people say. You can work hard and be smart and still not get paid well, lose your job. We also were lucky to be and stay healthy during our travel. After the 9 months we both re-entered the workforce again.